Sometimes the people, they look at the sky, all they see is clouds. But you know, Mr. Sunshine, he'd be peeping through the cracks if only he was allowed, to dig the spaces. You know what I mean?
Good evening, everyone. This is John Campbell introducing Miracle Hour on bbsradio.com, welcoming our listeners all over the world. And this is the hour where I explore miracles. And I talk to some fascinating, interesting people who've been very instrumental in my journey of awakening and bringing me to the place I am today and finding, in my case, A Course in Miracles, which is a piece of work which I feel very dedicated to. And interestingly, today's guest is a great guy called Tim Lawrence, who brought a piece of work called the Hoffman Process over to the UK from the States. And it's interesting how I first came about it. I'd been, I guess, 2 years into my awakening. I'd quit drinking and I'd started to get in touch with some of these buried feelings. And I was introduced to it by way of I'd been to a conference, and at the conference somebody had invited me up for a dance. Seemingly innocent, very commonplace situation. And I immediately lied, and I said, no, I've got a headache, and I kind of ran off to my bedroom, and I knew this wasn't natural. It didn't, it didn't sit right. And I lay on my bed that night, and I asked the question, and I was already getting in touch with the concept that, when we ask, we'll get the answer, and the fact that the answers come in different forms, maybe in a book or the lines of a song or whatever. But I asked the question, and I said, why can I not get up on a dance floor without any alcohol in me? And I let it go. And the next day I was at college, and somebody came up to me and said, I've got this fantastic book, and it's called Healing the Child Within by Charles Whitfield. And something inside me said, I have to read that book. And I did. And I read the book, and after I'd read the book, I realized that this was the answer to my question. So I now knew that I had this kind of wounded child inside me that had been acting out in so many different ways. So the next step was to find out how to get it done, because I had actually not heard of the concept. It was a totally new concept to me. So I asked another question, and I said, okay, now I know what the problem is. Where do I go to get some help around this? And again, I opened a book called The Southeast London Connection, and it was a book about different healing modalities and what have you. And as I opened it, on the right-hand page, and I'll never forget it, was a full-page ad advertising something called the Hoffman Quadrinity Process, as it was known then. More commonly known now today, it's just the Hoffman Process. And two things leapt off the page at me. One was their head office was in a place called Arundel in West Sussex in southern England. And the other was a testimonial by John Bradshaw, who I'd already, been doing a lot of reading about, and he said something to the terms of, great healing, necessary for anybody on the healing journey. John Bradshaw, author of, Healing the Shame That Binds You, which was the very book that I had been reading at the time. So I picked up the phone without knowing anything more, and I dialed the number, and the man I got that day was my guest today, Tim Lawrence, and it's a wonderful, wonderful pleasure to have you with us, Tim. And I guess you can remember that day and what happened.
Yeah, and it's a great pleasure to be talking to you once again, because that was, I would say 8 or more years ago. I remember because those were, early days for us doing the course, and whereas then I went on to do more teaching and writing and talking. It was me talking to every single potential student of ours, as we call them. And I remember the passion you already had then to change. I think maybe our line in the ad was, do you want a future different from your past? And I think you responded to yes. I really want to move some stuff. Maybe that's why you were attracted to probably the more intensive nature of our course than just doing stuff every week for a year or so.
Yeah, no, it was amazing, because I know that you were kind of surprised, and the first thing I remember you asking was, well, what do you know about it? And I said, nothing. And you said, well, do you know anybody that's done it? I said, no. And you said, well, have you read anything? I said, no. I said, just put me down, take the credit card, please, let's go ahead. And I have to say, Tim, you know, that was one of the pivotal moments of my life, and I still say it today, and you know probably more than anybody my commitment to your work, to this work, and it's been instrumental. It wasn't the end of the road for me, but it was certainly the beginning of a real awakening. So would you like to tell our listeners now a little bit about how you came about it, Tim? Please.
Yeah, sure. I think very, very much like you. By the way, yeah, I also don't believe, you know, it's the end of the road. I think we're, you know, always on a road, and that's what makes life very interesting. I came to it by sort of quite a long, different path of searching for different methods. I think even as a teenager, I was very dissatisfied, you know, creatively dissatisfied, mildly depressed, always sort of asking difficult questions like, you know, what's the point of this? You know, what am I doing here? A title later taken by Bob Geldof, or used by Bob Geldof very happily. But I always thought that I'll try to make it a story a little shorter than, you know, going through my whole life history. But I went to India after I finished my education in England, because I always felt that would be a very good rounding point for the very sort of academic and intellectual discipline. I needed something, I don't know what it was, but I knew later what it was a sense of spirit or spirituality, or going beyond the person and the personality and all its defects or problems or limited ways of acting in the world. That gave me a great interest in East meets West. And when I started studying more about that, it seemed that a lot of things happened in California. And I did an awful lot of different things in California. I lived there for 10 years or so. And I fell in with a group of people who did lots of courses. And we became more jaded and skeptical, and, yeah, been there, done that, got the T-shirt. Until a couple of people I knew went along to something called the Hoffman process that you've mentioned, and said, my goodness, it really seemed to capture so much. And I said, well, what do you mean? And somebody who was very worldly wise said, well, before I went there, I never realized how much I was like my father. Now, I'd studied various different things from perspective of, you know, how much more spiritual can I become, or how much more different can I be than my upbringing. And so I was quite shocked that somebody as worldly wise as her would be saying that. But when I looked at it, I thought, you know what, there's a lot of truth in it. The more I run away from parents and background, the more it seems to affect me in those deep, dark moments, those tea times of the soul, as Douglas Adams calls it, when you're wondering why you're still, or why, in my case, I was still affected by lack of commitment to a relationship, boredom at work and my career, why I was still always depressed at different times, and feeling quite lonely. So I gave it a whirl. I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. And my goodness, it was intensive, even though I thought I was fairly well versed in these things. And it just put lots of stuff together. It put lots of stuff about, cleaning out the past, especially family roles. It was a wonderful sort of reconnection with my intuition, trusting myself. And it was a reaffirmation of the strength of spirit within, despite all the personality. And so since then, I've been involved with it. That was 1989, I think, I did the course.
Yeah, it is fascinating, Tim, about how many people, I mean, you obviously, because you then took it and grew it in so many countries in an amazing style, but it is amazing how many people have a similar story that experience the work, that it really grabs them, you know. And you were very fortunate, I think, to actually train with Bob, the late Bob Hoffman, the co-creator of the instigator of the work.
Yeah, I didn't
know him, but tell us a little bit about that, because that's interesting. And I also love the story. I'd love you to share with our listeners this evening how he eventually, contacted you to come and do the training.
Yeah,
how did he come about? That's what.
And how he came about it. Well,
really.
Yeah, I mean, he was a fascinating man. None of my friends had done it with him because he was traveling in Europe at the time, but it was winter. He was taking a break from traveling, and so I walk up to the site, the venue where the course is going on, which is in the east, in the Bay Area, in the eastern part of the Bay Area. And there he is, and he's ready, to give me an interview. And my God, puts me through my paces, makes me laugh and cry in the first half an hour, promises me that I'll have great glimpses of understanding, and excites my curiosity. But the thing that really got me, and this is how sort of clever he was, without being academically trained or brilliant in the sense of, being able to put out all kinds of papers and theses and so on, I was trying to outsmart him and tell him about all my learning and studying, and he just looked at me, made me pause for a minute, so he got my attention, and said, Tim, you can't fool me. I'm too ignorant. Now, I don't know many people, I've never met anybody who can overpower you by the power of their ignorance, as it were. But what he managed to do was keep his mind fairly clear, like a hollow bamboo, so he could channel a universal wisdom. And he came up with this great way of working with people and, cutting through the usual layers. He trained various therapists. He trained lots of people in his time, and he, rolled it out into different countries. But essentially, he was a gifted intuitive, what you call a psychic, who was connected, who, when he worked with people, could call on other resources that may not always be available to others.
Well, may be available, but they don't know that they're available.
Yeah. As they say, they're always out there, but we're just not tuned into the right frequency.
Yeah.
And he came from a place of love and compassion. So despite, he could be quite tough love, or, punching you with velvet gloves. He'd say, I'm doing this to deal with your dark side. I know this isn't you, this is your patterns, but in the context of the course that he designed, which is, 8 pretty full-on days, lots of different behavior patterns would come up, and you'd have a chance with him or with the teachers he trained to figure out why you did that and a way out through. Now, in many different methods, you can do this, but what he did was make it very experience-based and very emotional. So, I've seen this in many countries, and whether you're Brazilian or German, British, Canadian, or American, people have the same emotional makeup beneath the cultural overlay. And, deep down, there are old bits of anger and resentment, there's old bits of grief and sadness, and there's a lot of joy and laughter waiting to bubble up. And somehow he had devised a lot of different exercises, including meditations, including play and dance, that got people beyond their usual way of interpreting the world. They would have somebody you were mentioning not being able to dance, not wanting to dance, who'd never thought they could dance or sing or laugh or get up and speak in front of people doing that.
Yeah.
And, there's something that there would be a memory in that week that would then be a way of acting in the future. So he's a man, he died 10 years ago in a couple of weeks, actually, who I regard as probably my greatest mentor.
Yeah. And because he wasn't trained in any psychological background, was he? Was he a tailor or something? Was he?
Yeah, he was a tailor. He was quite a good businessman, I think, because he had, five shops in the Bay Area, custom tailoring. By his 40s, I think he was, realizing, well, that wasn't where it was at for him. He had a gift. He could read people. He was tuned in. So he wanted to use that well, and he gave it the next 25 years of complete dedication to, moving people on. Yeah.
And I think the thing that struck me as well was, I think this is right in the story, wasn't it? He kind of also, like I shared about me asking a question, he didn't ask the question, why are people so unfulfilled, or why don't they achieve their potential? And then he kind of got the answer that they were. He got the answer,
yeah. Over the course of a few nights, he had a lot of revelatory dreams and insights. He was asking the question, what makes us unhappy? And the main answer that he got, and one of the things that is still very core to the whole Hoffman process, is that he said, in order to move on in lives, we have to clean up the past. In order to clean up the past, we have to go back to the original mother-father scenario, or lack of it. In some cases, there was adoption or abandonment or divorce and so on, and see what was unfulfilled. He said, you've got to go into this, connection of love or disconnection from love to understand yourself and a universal connection. There's no separation.
Yeah.
So there's a delicious blend of, psychodynamics, understanding the family of origin, and spirituality.
Yeah.
Who are we really? What are we trying to get back to? That sense of belonging, that sense of oneness.
Yeah. And this was the point, was it, that because he started off working with people on a 1 day a week basis, was it, to start with?
No, 1-to-1. Yeah, I'm sure it was pretty part-time. It was 1-to-1. He got a reputation for being able to, we're not allowed to call them difficult anymore, more challenging clients in other people's practice.
Yeah.
And as, the psychologists and psychiatrists got to hear of him, they'd say, look, you might try out this fellow Hoffman. We've come to a certain place in your treatment where we may not be making much progress, so, maybe he can move you on. And so he specialized in taking people who, just found it very difficult to break through a level of anxiety or relationship issues or, even work and career, and got them to understand, love themselves, understand, love and forgive their parents and others. You see, the beauty of understanding and forgiving your parents, even though it might feel a little, basic, is that they're the template, they're the model for, many future relationships, especially love, especially self-worth.
Yeah.
So he guided people through that. He made them, forgive their parents by understanding how their parents were as children.
Yeah, and I think that's a very, very big and clear point that I'd like to really underscore here to our listeners as well, because so many people say, I'm fed up with this work, blaming parents. This is not about blaming, isn't it? I mean, it really isn't. It's just the opposite.
It's about forgiveness, yeah.
Yeah, which of course is... which leads, it ties in so nicely with the Course in Miracles, but going back again a little bit, so what developed from there, from those, groups he was running once a week? How did it end up? He got sort of involved with some really high flying psychologists? Or?
Yeah, I think, he got involved, there was a one man called Ernest Petchy, and then there was Claudio Naranjo, who's still around, is a brilliant, originally Chilean psychologist and psychiatrist and brilliant classical pianist and expert on the Enneagram and expert on Tibetan Buddhism, and one of those just geniuses all around. And Claudio Naranjo had quite a following of people who wanted to learn from him. So when he got Hoffman's work, he broadcast it, disseminated around to quite a few people there and in Spanish and Portuguese-speaking countries. So actually it went huge in Brazil. So, he got Bob to put it on for a bunch of therapists and then would regularly get those therapists, who were trained with Bob to teach it, to put on other groups. And it just accumulated. It's mainly been word of mouth. Many countries, including us now, never advertise because, we prefer that people, with all due respect to you, John, come to us having known something about having known others. But I always remember what you said about, even if sometimes people don't feel you don't feel that Hoffman is too, that it's right for them, they know when it's right for them. They've got the spiritual strength to do it.
Yeah, and that is the magic of this work. I was just sharing with somebody just today, in fact, about the power of commitment, which of course is one of the pieces that I remember so clearly about my own course. That piece, I can't forget who it originated from, but that said, when we make a commitment, providence takes over, and that unseen forces and powers come into play, and the number of people who I witnessed who, really saw this was something for them, and they committed, and they didn't have the money, and they didn't have the resource, they didn't have the support to release them for 8 days, and then suddenly things happened, and a check dropped on the mat from the IRS, a repayment, one of those rare objects, came in, or something happened, and they went and did the work. It is.
I think, you're so true, and if there's one message people can take from tonight, if you commit to something, doors will open. Even if it's like letting go of something old, letting go of an old object or sometimes a friendship. Sometimes you have to let go when it's moved on, and then new stuff can come in. So it is with if we say I give up, I need some help, something can come in, I guess, and that's what you were doing when you asked for help on the dance floor.
Yeah. And I have to share with you, Tim, that was a major thing for me. And when I came off the course, well, two things I want to share, because I may not have told you these things, but sometime afterwards I was going to London, and I was on the platform at East Croydon Station, and there was a fantastic Italian guy running a cappuccino bar thing there, and he had this ghetto blaster, and I could not stop myself. I broke into dance on platform 5 with all the London commuters there, and in the end I had about 20 people around me all smiling and
really?
Cappuccino. Yeah. I could never have done that without having done that work. It would have been impossible.
Got rid of any inhibition there on the train platform.
Absolutely, and it was, I was so locked, and I had so much shame around my body and, my size and all the rest of it. It was amazing,
What's that thing about, dance as if nobody's watching?
Yeah.
Love as if you've never been hurt. Dance is a great metaphor for just connecting with an energy that's around, life force that comes, and maybe, all this work and the Course of Miracles is about connecting with a life energy that is more than us and can keep replenishing us.
That's it.
That it's being a channel to what's out there, and music is a great way of reminding us that there's different levels of energy around all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's funny talking about dance because, a lot of people, I think, especially people who come to that work to start with, there's a lot of misconception about God, and people have got their own conditioned, concerns about the word God, depending on how it was put on them when they were kids, But I just read a piece, I can't remember the exact words, but it was a piece from Hafiz, the Sufi poet.
Yeah.
And he said a piece, and I loved it, because I think it's so true. And it said, in the end of the day, we only have two choices. We either come to God dressed for dancing, or we get wheeled into God's ward on a stretcher.
Really brilliant.
I
very, very
thought
clear,
that was fantastic.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you about, which was fascinating, was when I did the course, and I don't know if you're the same. There's certain things that really stick in my mind, and I can always remember Craig putting that thing up on the board, and it said, "Wherever I go, whoever I see Mommy and Daddy, and they see me." And, that is such a powerful metaphor with what goes on. And what I have observed over my years of growth is that is running at every level of society, whether it's unconscious or conscious, it's running.
Yeah. Just to explain something about that, Craig, is very interesting, very, very warm Australian teacher. I think he came over for your course there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it was actually coined by a guy who was my teacher in the States many years ago, who's still teaching, called Stan Stefancic. And what he wanted to get it over very, very pithily, very in a concise way, so that somebody like you, John, would remember years after the power of Mum and Dad.
Yeah.
And how it affects, say every level of life, but just walk into any love relationship and you'll hear lots of mum and dad issues. So wherever I go, whoever I see, so no matter where I am in the world, I see Mummy and Daddy and they see me. Now, rather than making an extreme sort of blanket thing, what I'd say is, at some level during the day, wherever I am, at some level during the day, somebody I'm going to see may remind me of an early situation of Mum and Dad, an early situation of power or authority, reporting to a boss or standing up in public and feeling smaller than I am now. And if I feel smaller, I'll project that out, they'll pick it up, and they'll treat me as smaller. So imagine if we can replace that with feeling of self-love, self-confidence, or if our parents treated us incredibly lovingly all the time, which may have been true for many, many people, and we come out feeling very well supported. If we see Mum and Dad like that then, and they see us, we're coming from a much stronger place. So it's worth dealing with Mum and Dad stuff if it has been slightly negative. I mean, they all did the best they could, but sometimes, and I'm a parent, you're a parent, what's our best is perceived by children as not enough.
Yeah. No, that's true. And again, reminding our listeners, it's not about blame. It really isn't, folks. This course is not about blame. It's about just the opposite. And
I think
and since it is a spiritual radio station, and we have a lot of psychics who've got their programs and all the rest of it, I'd like to just share with you what happened after I did my course, which was quite incredible, Tim, because my mother had been dead 20 years when I did this work, and my father 25 years. And about 3 weeks, well, first of all, when I came off the course, I went straight to the cemetery where they'd been cremated, and I realized that I had this kind of imbalance perception of my parents, where I'd made my father the saint, and my mother the devil, because she was the alcoholic, abusive one, as it appeared to me. And so I'd got this idealization of my father and this demonization of my mother, the imbalance. And what I found that doing the work, I healed that, and suddenly they became equal within me. And I went to the cemetery, and I was shocked to find that after they had passed, we had made an entry in the book, the memorial book for Dad, and we hadn't done a single thing for Mum, So I went back and got the records from the crematorium, and I corrected that, and then I got a little garden of remembrance put together and everything else. And 3 weeks after I did, and I had a little ceremony, which was beautiful, and then 3 weeks after this is absolutely true, and you know the couple, and I've already checked out, it's okay to tell you it. Joyce and Jerry Gray are great friends of mine for many, many years.
Oh, yeah. From
Mileage, you remember them. The whole family ended up doing the process, the two children and both of them. And Joyce is a very, very gifted psychic, but she doesn't use it. I mean, she doesn't use it professionally or anything like that, but she is a channel. She's amazing. And she phoned me up about 3 weeks. They didn't know anything about what I'd done at that stage. And said, look, John, I'm sorry, I've got to contact you because this woman has been coming through to me, and she's been asking me to contact you for some weeks now, and I haven't done it. Now she won't leave me alone. I want some peace. And I said to her, I had enough sort of exposure then to channeling and that kind of stuff. And I said, well, how does she present herself? Because I know that they always present in a way that... So she said, well, she's always got a blue dressing gown on, and she's always got a glass of whiskey in one hand and a cigarette in the other. I said, oh, that's my mum.
That's a clear description.
Absolutely. And I said, so what was the message she gave you? So she said she wanted to tell you thank you from the bottom of her heart for what you've done,
Beautiful.
And that was incredible, Tim. That was from people who, Joyce knew nothing about my background or whatever. So, if anybody had any doubts about the genuineness of the spiritual realm, I mean, that to me was amazing.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
It was an amazing thing. So going back again to yourself, so then you did the work, you were inspired, obviously, and then what happened, because you got contacted, didn't you, by Bob? That's a lovely story.
Yeah, because he came up to me, he tapped me on the shoulder after the course, and said, I might have a little job for you. And I thought, oh, well, he knows I've traveled a lot and I speak some languages. Maybe he wants me to, check out a translation of some of his work, because he was, going to more and more countries. So I thought, oh, that'd be nice. And that's kind of nice for my ego. I'm hand picked by the main man to do some translation work. And so, we made an arrangement to meet. And he said, now I've checked you out, and I think you'd be a very, very valuable teacher. And I thought he'd done a criminal background check. Thought he'd been in touch with the FBI or the SSPD or something. Yeah. And he said, no, I've been asking my friends above, and they feel very, very warmly about you. And that was the first time that sort of had happened, And I wondered about it for years, and sometimes I still think about it, because, I wasn't putting myself forward to be a Hotham teacher, and I see, people applying, they have lots of courage to sort of put themselves on the line. I'd studied psychology, I even, had some individual clients, but I didn't see myself as, being a leader of a group. And, somehow, and there's, a lot of help behind me, because often I say, look, I don't know what to do. Is there anybody out there where I can, find some help? I've managed to, get the process to a whole bunch more people, and see myself as doing it for my life's work, and it's very interesting, very satisfying work to do. So maybe the helpers above did see way down the line.
Well, I think they obviously did, because what's happened has been amazing. And we're talking with Tim Lawrence tonight, who's the prime mover, really, in bringing the Hoffman Institute into England and many other countries. And you can check out their website at www.hoffmaninstitute.com or .co.uk. And you can call in and talk to Tim or myself, have any questions using the lines there that are on your website. And I think the other thing, Tim, was when you got across to England, how did you start? Because it was very much a two-person show, wasn't it, with you and your wife Serena to start with?
It was, it was, us in the...
And we're pretty sorry to interrupt you, we're a very closed-down bunch over here in England as well, aren't we?
Yeah, no, it was really a question of faith. And, sometimes I just, woke up. I remember it was the first summer, and it was a lot warmer in London than it ever is in San Francisco in summer. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night on a warm night in a cold sweat thinking, oh my God, what have I done? What am I doing? Nobody's signed up for this course. I picked a date a few months ahead. I tried to talk to a bunch of people. Nobody was signing up. I thought, oh my goodness, I've got a child who's going to be born. I've just been married a few months and so on. What I essentially did was I contacted just a few people who'd done the course, who lived in England and other countries. I invited them around to a party. I asked them to mention it to other people. I got around a few different therapists and rehab centers and coaches and spiritual counselors and so on to sort of put the word about. And before I knew it, the first call, well, not before I knew it, after a bit, close to the time of the actual date, I picked the date, I picked the place, I've got the teachers to fly in, it filled up. I thought, oh, well, that's nice. Now, that sounds great, doesn't it? But the next two were very unfull. At that point, I thought, when is it ever going to happen? Or am I going to have to, pack up and, I don't know, retrain in something else, sell houses like half the other population in England? But then it started filling up again and again and again. I remember, a couple of years into it, we put on an extra course just a couple of months ahead, and that filled up too. And at that point I thought, wow, there's something here that must appeal to human nature. And the interesting thing about the English is that, as I say, the bigger the bigger the front, the bigger the back. They've got this big front about being closed down, and this huge back about wanting to be opened up and having an awful, huge, deep well of emotion to come out.
Yeah.
That's the interesting thing. Why is it that, the Brazilians love to do it? You think they're great, they're really happy. The other side of their happiness is quite a sadness, but they still love to connect with others and with a sense of spirit above.
Yeah.
The English, there was many arguments for them not to do it. It's in a group, it's about emotions, it comes from the States and so on. And yet they took to it, and it's part of the scenery here.
Yeah, it really has. It's been amazing, the growth. And also, when did you first get the inspiration to actually write a book about the process, which you did so magically, with You Can Change Your Life, a future different?
I think it was about the time of the millennium. I think, everybody's saying, oh, well, everything's going to melt down. I think something about that. I think it was a few years after I'd done here, so I was relaxing about just sort of the day-to-day running of things. I think I went to South Africa and just got the inspiration that, wait a minute, there hasn't been a book on this for 30 years or more, 25 years. Why don't I sort of write a combination of, the case histories, the stories of the people there, plus give quite a bit of the technique so that not everybody can take a week away or afford to do it or, arrange childcare and so on. They can get some of these techniques about forgiveness, about meditation, about opening up to their intuition from a book, and convince somebody to publish it.
And the publishers are Hodder and Stoughton, is that right?
Yeah, in the UK, and then Bantam picked it up in the US, and they're fairly well distributed. And then there were sort of 7 or 8 foreign editions, including in Russian, which I can't even read, let alone understand.
Incredible.
So it's been a good platform for the other the other countries, to get the word out.
And what's the title of the book in North American continent? Because there's a different title as well.
Yeah, it's simply The Hoffman Process there.
Oh, okay.
So the book is a true description of the content.
Yeah.
Here it's called You Can Change Your Life, and I'll tell you a funny story. So an Irish lady living in the Gulf in the Middle East told her husband when he was passing through Heathrow, because he was coming back for a banking conference or something, to pick up You Can Heal Your Life, which is a wonderful book. I'm sure
Louise Hay.
You've heard about Louise Hay. And he picks up not You Can Heal Your Life, but in England at Heathrow, the title of my book is You Can Change Your Life. So You Can Change Your Life by Tim Lawrence. So he picks that up and gets to Bahrain on the Gulf, and his wife says, "Oh, goodness, I told you to get You Can Heal Your Life, and you got the wrong book. Well, you can read it, because I'm not going to read it." So he read it, and he signed up, and he came to do it. And he's changed so much that in his relationship that his wife came along to do it as well. Now, the funny thing, they're expats, but in a couple of months, we're going to do the first process in the Middle East, mainly with Arabs and Arabic people. And, of course, we'll do it in English. Their standard of English is very good. But I'm really looking forward to seeing, how will they interpret this this strange program. And, we've got to be sensitive culturally as well.
Well, that is amazing, Tim. I mean, oh my God, I'd love to be there on that one, because, I have a lot of experience, as you know, in that part of the world and in other cultural differences.
That's right. You spent a lot of time in Dubai and places.
Absolutely. And
where there was oil, there was John Campbell in the early
in the old days, yeah. But it's interesting. I'm still, and I now work together with an oil company and becoming very, altruistic and enlightened.
Well, you're helping them just understand other realms, aren't you?
Well, that's it. And I do feel, I think this is such an exciting time to be alive. I just, everywhere I go, I see people, getting out of their misery and into their pain, as John Bradshaw calls it.
Yeah. Misery into pain.
Which is the part of the journey. And that was the other point I wanted to make. One of the things I really value about this work is that, for me, it's an essential part of the healing, and there can be a tendency to skip this part because it takes courage, and you dig deeper than anything I've ever done before.
I think what some of us can get into is we so love the meditation, the quietness, we so love connecting with the divine, that we may avoid some of our emotional makeup. What I see is it's important to address the spiritual, the emotional, the intellectual, and the physical. But what I saw when I was around religious communities, spiritual communities especially, is that some people are more than happy to be, up there and out there, and almost diagnose it as a spiritual bypass. You bypass doing the work we need to do on this more material plane.
Yeah, no, that's I totally am with you on that, and I know it's still a bone of kind of discussion, let's put it that way, out there in the therapeutic field, especially with, I tend to find with the type of therapies that deal more at the level of, hypnosis and NLP and that kind of thing. There can be an avoidance, and you call it spiritual bypass, spiritual leapfrogging is another term, and I think that from my experience is that will often seep out later on, and of course the other thing is when you get in a relationship.
So in a relationship, you see it seeping out?
Yeah, well, to me, that is really what I see in the 21st century, is relationship as being a tool to reaching, enlightenment, if you like,
or a quicker way to misery.
Yeah, well,
speeds up the process.
Yeah. And for me, it's been a process. It's like the whole forgiveness concept, and I have no desire to that anybody believes anything I say or whatever. But my own experience is that it has been a process. So, and I found myself time after time saying to myself, "Oh my God, I'm so glad I did Hoffman." Early days. So it's like, to me, Hoffman is what I would call traditional forgiveness, in the belief that that's what happened to me, that's what was done to me or whatever. I have to deal with that and get all the old sort of cemented emotions released over that. And then I moved on to an awareness that it didn't happen to me, it happened for me, for my own spiritual soul evolution.
Yeah.
And then finally, I've just been blown away since I got to become a dedicated student, and I really say a student. I definitely want to underline that one of the course, because the course made so much sense when I suddenly realized that, well, none of it happened anyway. It's all this projection of my mind, and that was a heavy-duty one, and that's why this work is can be so challenging. But the point I'm making is I'm so pleased that I did the other stages first.
Yeah,
because I think
you've really been on a path. I think what you're also saying is don't get too holy about any particular aspect of it. Our stuff, which is quite traditional or basic, people can get very holy about, but it's just a part of the path.
Absolutely
at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, half the fun that hopefully keeps me with an element of humility. I hope so. Anyway, it's my realization that what I believed was true 2 years ago, I just it's totally not a belief of mine anymore.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm not attached to.
It's our whole story, our emotional story, including our past relationships and including the way we grew up in our families. I mean, you ask a brother and a sister how their parents were, and it's completely different stories, but
Absolutely.
It's true for them, and they need to move on from that.
Absolutely. So how many countries visiting at the moment, Tim?
14 or so. Yeah.
Right.
I'm hoping to increase that, because I like traveling. So we'll start Bahrain this year and Sweden next year, and then we've got quite a bit of interest from Holland, Turkey, India.
Yeah.
And we're quite well poised over here to train people and bring it out there. And if it's meant to be, it'll be.
Absolutely, but it is amazing. I mean, I think the fact you're going over to the Middle East, because when I think of the
repression, John, you've seen that. They're dying for something like this. They're
absolutely
so well educated and yet so constrained. And
absolutely.
Now they get this. Because they talk to each other, they really talk to each other, or they text each other all the time, SMS.
Yeah.
They hear quickly about who's doing what to who. So
yeah. And Tim, would you mind sharing how many people you've got participants in that first one?
In the Bahrain?
Yeah.
Well, we can only take 24, and we already had 16 just when the first text message went up. So
right.
What we need to do, I know it sounds really sort of up myself, as the Australians would say, but we do need to train more teachers all the time. We're always putting it out and looking at people's applications to train, because without teachers, and it's quite a qualification.
Yeah.
We can't do many of these courses. It's just a few hundred or thousand people a year.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about the teaching of that, but I'm interested in this course, and how many of those are locals?
Well, they'll mainly be from Bahrain, and they are locals there. If we did it in Dubai, and I did a talk in Dubai, as you know, I think officially it's sort of only 8% locals, but interested in this would be sort of one in 100. So whereas in Bahrain it will be probably 70% locals. In Dubai it would probably be 7% locals. So we're going to do it in Bahrain first, because I feel that the expats can get it in Australia, Singapore, States, Canada, England,
absolutely.
wherever.
That is so exciting. And what's the date of that one?
The 1st of December. We'll be
1st of
doing
December.
that.
I'll have to remember that one.
We'll wait for the heat. It's about 45, 50 degrees. That's 105, 115 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, and where are you doing it, Tim?
Slightly toasty. We're doing it on an island off Bahrain called Hawar. That there's only one hotel on, so we can get the privacy there. That is quite nice to have. It was an island that's near Gatta, and was actually theirs for a while. So isn't very well known. Isn't exactly on the tourist circuit, but very quiet. We'll go out there on a speedboat. I like the idea of that.
Yeah.
Leave your usual concerns behind and come to a nice
That is
retreat
so cool. That is
overlooking
so cool.
the Gulf. Yeah.
Oh my God! Because Bahrain now, I can't remember the last time I was there, but now you can drive across. Isn't there a connection between Bahrain and Saudi, or Bahrain and
That's
Dubai?
right. Yeah, which is really interesting. The Bahrainis, because they're much more liberal than the Saudis, and the Saudis go over on their weekends to sort of kind of see how the other half lives and drinks. It's the usual thing where one country has much cheaper or has alcohol and the other one doesn't. You bring out all the closet alcoholics.
Yeah.
Oh no, this is so.
And if it ever gets into Saudi, I'll be
contacting me for my
gently surprised. Yeah.
And who's teaching this one out there, Tim?
Well, who would you know? Eliza, who was married to a Palestinian for many years, so she has a bit of an in. And an Australian teacher called Lorene.
Lorene.
She's travelled quite a bit out to Dubai, and she's had a lot of the Bahrainis out in process in Australia.
They don't know what they're in for. They are in for.
Yeah, no, they'll remember her. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
One of a kind is Lorene.
And you'll be there yourself, will you?
And me, yeah. Okay. Me and probably one of the younger teachers coming to the end of their training.
That is so exciting.
And a lot of interest.
Have you got any other
training.
countries on the radar which you looking to get into? Or?
Yeah, no, the ones that I think we get most interest from are Sweden, Holland, Turkey, India. Others might appear. So we've just got to think sort of more in terms of 3 and 5 year planning about the teachers that we need and the systems that we need and the staff that we need. I mean, we're getting more grown up now about how to run it.
Well, I mean,
pitching up at a conference centre and saying, "Here we are."
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's interesting when you're talking about you needing more teachers, because I can remember one of the very first conversations I had with you. Do you remember when we were driving down?
Yeah. What would it be like to teach? Yeah.
Well, no, I was saying about you've got to get more teachers, Tim. And because I could see the potential in this thing,
Yeah. And part of that was my own laziness, I think. And now, again, I feel that it's much more than me. So my laziness was, we've got it out there. I can teach a few times a year. I can train some others. But in order for it to be much bigger, it has to be much bigger than me and what I can do. So I trained others to train others now. And they've trained others to train others.
That is wonderful. And I really want to acknowledge you, Tim, publicly, because that is fantastic wisdom, And folks, I tell you, one of the biggest things, if you want something to grow, let go and teach others to do the same.
Well, that was Bob's gift, because so many methods, have a charismatic leader who really knows it connects well with people, travel the world, they do fantastic workshops, but they get tired and they don't train others, they don't trust others to do it to the same level, so it fizzles out with them.
Absolutely, and I always liken that, and I've seen it in a few different institutions, organizations, etc., and it's very common, and I understand it, where the people who are responsible for first creating it almost becomes, and to me it's about just reflecting a family system. It's like it becomes their child, and it's just like all of us parents who've had teenagers, etc., know that for those children to grow, we have to let go.
Yeah.
And that's what I think happens.
Otherwise they'll be difficult adolescents all their lives.
Exactly, Yeah. So tell me, Tim, what about the teaching now? How do people, how does that go, and how many do you have, and what's the process there? Because it's obviously not for everybody.
Yeah, no, we've got 6 people in training at the moment, and
that's in UK alone.
Yeah, we wanted to take a bunch soon. There was another 9 starting in the States, I think, just last month or so. What we found out is, we build up a sort of a strong spirit of their own group at the start of it, so they can help themselves with the learning, and then they get a mentor to follow them through, and then they shadow a whole bunch of weeks, a whole bunch of processes, taking more and more, and they have much more off-site training now than they used to. So they're getting a lot thrown at them. It's quite hard to juggle with a normal job, so people are often freelance or, have a bit of time on their hands or have taken a sabbatical or something, and they train, and, they'll take on at the beginning, when they're first teacher, they won't be getting, the huge responsibility. But it's still, we've got to train them. Our test at the end is, would you trust, a friend or a family, or a member of the family with this person for a week?
Absolutely.
And, also trust that they have a connection. As Bob said to me, look, Tim, don't worry about what to say. Just, you walk into a room and that takes faith. And so we have to tell people, there isn't an answer to everything. It isn't black and white. It's a lot of gray areas. People are human. So just go in there and feel what's going on.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is fantastic. And I think, and also I guess that your teachers have to be continually kind of looking at their own stuff and that kind of stuff to keep.
Yeah, they're in supervision, and they have lots of encouragement in the team as well. They have, all 22 meals of the week together to really, bash stuff out. So it's hard to go onto automatic or into denial. Yeah, which is very necessary.
Yeah, I just got to, I was on a course recently, and the guy that's teaching, Gary Renard, was talking about the need for lightening up, and this spirituality is not meant to be so heavy and all the rest of it, And he told me a joke about the Middle East, and I just wanted to share that. Is that okay with you?
No, sure.
This was because you're going out in the Middle East. It just triggered this, and I thought it was hilarious. And it's about this woman. She's out in the Middle East on holiday, you see, and she's got a map in her kind of safari trousers of the area, and she's taking it out. She's looking, she's got Syria there and Israel and, Iran and Iraq, and she's looking at, and then all of a sudden on the ground she sees one of these lamps, like Aladdin-type lamps, and she thinks, oh my God, I wonder what that is. So she picks the lamp up and rubs the lamp, and sure enough, the genie pops out, you see. And the genie pops out, and he's pretty grumpy, and he says, okay, ma'am, he says, look, you don't get 3 wishes with me, you only get 1, and I'm in a hurry, I've got a lot on my back, so, can you hurry up and just give me your wish? So she thinks, well, it's a bit harsh, but anyway, she gets her map of the Middle East out, and she says, look, she said, my wish is to bring peace to this whole region. She said, all this region that we're in here, and I just want you to bring peace to the whole region. And the genie says, come off it, woman, you've got to be crazy. These people have been fighting for thousands of years. That's a total impossibility. That's absolutely ridiculous. There's no way I'm ever going to be able to do that. That's unreasonable, and no, I can't do that, but I'll give you one more chance, and, please hurry up because I'm in a hurry. So she thinks again, and she says, okay, all right. She said, I would like to bring a man into my life, and I'd like this guy to be really good looking. Got to be really good looking, and he's got to be very well established, bringing in lots of money, and he's got to be really into the home, he's got to be really into the home and the DIY, do it yourself, and be able to do the jobs around the house, and really into me and the kids, really takes, really good interest in me and the kids. He's not one of these guys that goes out, boozing and drinking and watching, sports and all the rest of it, none of that. And he's got to love gardening. He's got to take care of the garden, and also cooking. He's got to be, really good cook, and a great lover, of course, and he's got to be spiritual as well. He's got to be really into spiritual stuff, And all of a sudden, Genie says, "Hey, man, give me that frigging map again."
Easy to find peace in the Middle East.
So that reminded me of that, which is a little fun about the differences we may see amongst the genders. So, Tim, what's the next thing on the road for you, writing-wise? Have you got anything?
More articles, actually. I went on holiday with a friend of mine called Patrick Holford, who's got 27 books out there. He's does a lot about nutrition and disease and supplements. And we were talking about publishing, and he said, you know what? People are looking so much more to the internet now. It's our attention span has gone down. So more I just sort of see myself doing little bits, talking to magazines, newspapers, putting the word out there. If I do another book, I think I'll be waiting for the inspiration. And at the moment, I'm happy that it hasn't happened. So yeah, it'll just be I'm doing articles about forgiveness or family relations or relationships in general, communication. But the book number 2 is somewhere up there. It's not in here at the moment. And it's deeply buried.
And another thing popped in my mind as well. I understand that because this work, I think about what goes on at the highest levels of society. In acting out, this sort of mummy-daddy thing is acted out at all levels. And I believe, am I right in thinking that you did a presentation, or you actually did a course at Harvard University recently?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the Kennedy School of Government, which I guess is allied to Harvard Business School. They were looking at what leaders need, what leaders could do to clear out some older or more basic stuff that could get in the way of leadership. So for the second year running, we've gone to Harvard and taken a pretty decent sized group. I think they've had a lot of teachers and 45 students. And take them through, and a very international bunch, and it's great. These are guys who are in government or in major corporations, and just like any other human being, want to plumb the depths and get good clarity.
that is an amazing acknowledgement of the work. You know, it really is. And Tim, where do people go now if they want to find some more information about the work, and who do they contact?
Well, the web's very good for that. You know, whatever country you're in, if you put in HoffmanInstitute.com, you know, you'll come up with a map of the world, and you can click on that. You know, they could put a search into Google for Hoffman process, and they'll come up with stuff. Here, of course, it's, you know, HoffmanInstitute.co.uk. Somebody spent hours, he admitted, looking for negative stuff on the Hoffman process, and he said he couldn't find any. And I joked, I said, yes, we've suppressed it all. But truth to say, you know, it's all good, positive stuff out there, which is great.
Well, Tim, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on tonight. Thank you for giving up your time, and do give my love to Serena and the kids, and just know that you know, you've got a lot of people who love you, love the work that you do. And
thanks, John. I've always really enjoyed our connection, which has, you know, reminded me tonight of it and how long it's gone. And I greatly admire your passion for life and all it brings, and especially the challenges it brings. So thank you for empowering others to keep with that.
That's very kind. That's lovely, Tim. And then let's get together before the summer's out. It would be lovely to do that. And thanks once again. And everyone who's listened tonight, you've been listening to Tim Lawrence from the Hoffman Institute. And my name's John Campbell, operating with Miracle Hour, and wishing you all a great evening, a great afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and look forward to hearing from you next week. Thank you all. God bless you all. Bye-bye now.